a lot of us kind of have trauma from that point or that time period, and but it also gave me time to reframe my life in a way where I was thinking about what I wanted. And I guess like it was definitely I guess I was going through it, and then I was like, man, the pandemic's happening, and then I was like, well, this is all I have right now. I just have to write. So it was kind of a blessing and a curse because I was like really stuck with it. I was like, I have to do this. There's nothing else.
When you first said going through it, I assumed that you meant like going through the record or going through the tracks. But
right.
But then, you said it again, and it took on a very different context of, just sort of, I guess, broadly dealing with shit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's definitely what happened. I was it was at the tail end of 2019. I kind of went through a serious kind of shift in my personal life with my relationships, and specifically with someone. And then during the pandemic, I was like, I'm just going to take some time off, figure out my shit, and then come back. And then the pandemic happened, and then I was like, I'm forced to figure out all of this stuff. And also it has changed a lot of my friendships and my relationships in my life. It's just, I think for all of us, just even how we kind of re-entered those spaces, it's taken some time for us to sort of, it's taken us some time to sort of just like, I guess, get into it and get back into the groove of being a human being and being social.
Shifted my personal life is an interesting way of putting it, because it sounds like it wasn't just one relationship. Maybe there was one relationship kind of at the core of things, but it sounds like everything was in the process of shifting.
Yeah, totally. Everything was in the process of shifting. It took me a while. I was sort of, I think I was in my early 20s, and then the pandemic kind of ate up my mid 20s, and now I'm now in my late 20s. So it's all these different eras of my life, very pivotal moments of my life. And I just kind of have been thinking about how that shifted. I guess now I think I'm definitely, such a different person than who I was when I started writing the record, for sure. And I think a lot of people feel that way too when they start writing.
I mean, I suspect a lot of this is, for obvious reasons, on the record itself, but are you comfortable discussing what those changes were in your life around 2019?
Yeah, totally. I guess I was like in a really intense codependent friendship, and I just thought it was
not even a relationship.
Yeah, totally. It was a really intense friendship. And I think sometimes, especially music, I feel like there's so many songs about, breakups and love, and a lot of music is romantic based. And I think for me, there wasn't really a space that was created, or music that was, that I felt that I could interpretate or take into a friendship sort of realm. And I think this record, I really wanted to delve into that. And then also, I guess, play with like, what is romance and what platonicity looks like and how they kind of bleed into each other and stuff like that. And I was in this really intense friendship, and I had to like sort of exit out. And then I kind of spent the entire time during the pandemic sort of reevaluating my wants and I guess in my needs, and also just taking time to reevaluate, I guess, my behavior and how I sort of entered all of my close friendships and stuff like that, and how that also kind of caused me a lot of grief in a way that I wasn't really, being, I wasn't respecting my needs, I guess, kind of. I'm a huge people pleaser, but now I'm kind of learning how to let go and try to,
That is a hard thing. I understand that. But it almost sounds like you had to break up with your friend, basically.
Yeah, totally. And like, I think everyone kind of says it. Sometimes friend breakups are a little bit more harder than romantic breakups, because there's so much time and so much more, I feel like, for me at least, a lot more intimacy that you connect with this person, and there's no weird power dynamic. I don't know. I feel like sometimes in relationships there's a lot of, or like romantic relationships, there's a lot of power dynamics that kind of come to play. But with friendships, it's just I enjoy your company, and I just
there are definitely power dynamics in friendships.
Okay, yeah,
Right? I mean, they're of a different nature than relationships, but sometimes they're not actually that different. I mean, it's just the nature of
yeah.
having like two different people in a space together. There's got to be some kind of inherent power dynamic.
Totally, totally. Maybe I should rephrase that. Maybe I meant more like, I don't know. I think maybe the way I sort of have in the past entered a lot of my past romantic relationships, I felt like there was power play. But I feel like with my friendships, there's never, or I try to not have that happen. But yeah, maybe there could be. Now I got to reevaluate that too. But
I think what you're getting at is that there's almost like that you're entering a romantic relationship with a predetermined notion of what the roles are going to be, and that predetermined notion doesn't exist. Obviously, things evolve over time, but we generally don't think of friendships in that way.
yeah, absolutely. And I think there isn't, maybe with romantic relationships, there's a lot of different expectations that aren't necessarily always there in friendships. I mean, a lot. They both are really similar, and like they both acquire the same level. I feel like intimacy, but I think sometimes friendship requires. Well, yeah, I guess they're very, yeah, they kind of mirror each other essentially, and but for me, I guess in my life, my friendships have always taken sort of the king position and sort of have always been so important to me. So yeah, when this friendship had ended, I just kept thinking about where, like, I think I kept thinking about how I wanted to tell this person that I was wanting to move into a different space, or wanting to maybe have our friendship evolve, and knowing that sometimes you just gotta accept that people are people, for you just accept the person as they are, and you can't make someone change and all of that. And again, I was in a different headspace. I was much younger, so it was harder for me to sort of grasp that. But I think a lot of it was like maybe also projecting, because I'm someone who can be like, yeah, totally. I if that's what you want from me, I'm gonna be that person. I'm gonna be that person. But
You're an enabler.
yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I get that, and I think an unfortunate side effect of being a people pleaser is that we can allow ourselves to allow others to give into their worst impulses.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, part of me mostly used to think about the idea of not trying to be so like, because I feel like I was always just there for the ride, and then realizing that I'm also part of the ride, and like it's not like supposed to happen at me, like I'm supposed to be there with them. So that took a moment for me to sort of digest and be like, oh yeah, life's not like happening at me, it's happening from me, and like I gotta control and stuff it, and I gotta be in the driver's seat and not in the passenger seat.
Yeah, this idea of it being a ride is almost like, and I don't know if this is the case, but it's almost like you're self-selecting. You're selecting friends with very intense very intense personalities. Like this idea of being along for the ride is I mean that is a power play, right? That is sort of allowing them to kind of dominate or to determine the direction that the friendship goes in.
Yeah, for sure. I guess, yeah, I feel like I'm having a therapy session right now, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, I feel like, yeah, I guess so. That's true. I mean, that's definitely a way to look at it. I think, like, of course, I was kind of, I was trying my best to be present, but I think I kind of, because I was younger, I was just trying to soak up all these new experiences and trying to gain perspective and all of that about just life and people and all of that stuff. But I wasn't really spitting anything back out in a way that I like tried to frame it and like make it my own. I felt like I was taking everything in, soaking it up, but I wasn't like, yeah, squeezing anything out essentially. And now I'm learning how to squeeze everything out and be like, this works for me.
What does it mean to you to be present?
I don't know. I guess it's like, I guess it's kind of like maybe having a response that isn't necessarily a response where I have to feel like I have to have like a positive impact. Like I can just say how I feel and it could be neutral. Like I think a lot of times when you're a people pleaser, you're always like trying to be as agreeable as possible or kind of be as sort of just likable, and that really kind of doesn't allow you to be human. And I think I kind of denied myself that for a while. And and also just like not being small. I think that friendship, I learned that like I really did make myself small. And I think, I don't know, I think a lot of people, or maybe it's just for me, but there's always that one person that, and it could be romantic or friend or platonic, and they just really change your life in a way that they teach you that, you know, this is not what you want, and this is definitely not what you're gonna try to bring back into your life, essentially.
I like the idea of allowing yourself to, I don't know if this was your exact wording, but allowing yourself to be unpleasant, you know, like giving yourself the ability to do that. Cause like, obviously like we don't want to be unpleasant, right? I mean, one, on a very base level, we want people to like us, but like, we don't want to feel like we're making people's lives, you know, markedly worse.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe not only unpleasant, or not unpleasant, but more just like, saying, like, I used to have such a hard time to even, like, it's crazy. Like some of my friends who've known me for a long time will say things like, you know, it's so funny because now you'll tell me the truth that you really didn't like that restaurant. Cause I would be the person who'd be like, that was fine.
You're not talking like major life things. You're talking about like really minor things. Just
Totally.
the ability to say like, hey, I wasn't into that. I wasn't into that restaurant.
Yeah, I would definitely be like, no, like that was fine. Like it wasn't like incredible, but it was great. Like it you know, like the eggplant parm wasn't like my favorite thing on the menu, but I'd have it again, kind of thing. But like it took some time, and I don't know. Yeah, I think a lot of it comes back to, I guess, just childhood stuff and just my place in the world, I feel like. So I think it's nice. And I guess this record, I don't know, I wanted to maybe not even talk about finding a resolution. I think that was I just kind of wanted to spill, I guess, kind of.
I'm a little bit older than you, and you know, I think like having lived for as long as I have, that there aren't really resolutions in life. It doesn't, you know, there aren't, you know, I know, you know, you've got the Greta Gerwig poster behind you. Like I know you're, you know, I know you're a big movie buff, and I know that a lot of that sort of played a role in the creation of this record. But I do think that there's a very obvious way in which people talk about movies and TV creating unrealistic expectations. Obviously, like, things are heightened. Everybody's beautiful. But I think that there's something even beyond that, which is the 3-act structure, or the act breaks, or the commercial breaks, or, you know, the notion that like that life exists in chapters, but it doesn't. It's, you know, it's just it's one nonstop movie, and you know, until it's through.
Yeah, totally. I agree with that. And it's also like simultaneously happening all at once at the same time. And I also think like, there's no gray parts in film, which I think we always kind of generally live in the gray in a way. Like the mundanity is the gray of our lives, and the gray can be kind of great. It's weird. I think I grew up loving film and TV because escapism, like we always do in art and everything. But I think also it was a way for me to realize that, I don't know, I think it was a way for me to realize you can tell a story in any way that you want, or you could even warp your own story, like your own personal story, which I I find kind of interesting too in a way, because you can, I don't know.
I mean, you mentioned escapism, and you kind of briefly alluded to your childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Your parents were not very into letting you listen to secular music. Is that right?
Yeah, well, okay, here the thing is, I grew up, in a Muslim household, so it was kind of like, if the music was playing, for instance, like I started listening to pop music, like I heard it on the radio here and there when I was a kid through like my cousins and stuff like that, but
Through osmosis.
through osmosis, and then I think around 6th grade is when I really like I got a TV in my room, and I was like, okay, cool, like I can have the door closed now. I can like put on Much Music, which is basically like MTV Canada, and we would have a bunch of like,
I know Nardwuar.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, you got nice Nardwuar, cool, shout out. And so I would watch like the top 40 artists and stuff, and I was like really stoked. But yeah, it was like kind of like, if it was on, it wasn't like completely like my mom or like my family wouldn't bash it, but like it wasn't necessarily encouraged, I guess. That's probably the word.
That's different. It's that thing of sort of like attempting to read about somebody's life in like a very like truncated bio. And I had the impression that they were just absolutely no, like you absolutely cannot listen. Cause like, and I don't know, I don't know if this translates exactly to Islam, but like obviously like there's that sort of classic trope, and you definitely know this through watching movies, but that classic trope of like, this is the devil's music, like keep it out of our house.
Totally, yeah, absolutely. It's really funny because I have a couple of friends who also grew up like religious, and we kind of like talk about our religious traumas together, but they're like Christian, so like they'll talk about not being able to grow up, or like not being able to listen to like secular music as well, and just like listening to Christian artists. So it's such an interesting parallel, and for me, like it was kind of like not only like the devil's music, but like you shouldn't be doing that. Like it was so closely related to, or it was kind of, for me at least, it was like so closely related to morality. It was kind of like, listen to music equals bad person. So it took a little bit for me to like unlearn, for sure. But I think there was also like Muslim music, in a sense that like there was at the time for me, or I don't know if he still does it, but Cat Stevens, who is Yusuf Islam.
Islam, yeah.
He was doing like Muslim music, and I think that was sort of my introduction.
I think he kind of swung back to the pop stuff.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, he kind of like re-released Tiva Tillerman too, which was cool. Or like it got remastered for the second time, maybe, or first time, I'm not sure. But yeah, that he was kind of like the intro to like, I guess, music for me in a way. That was kind of like one of my earliest memories. And then also after getting older, or like in my teens, I sort of rediscovered just his older stuff, and I was just kind of like, this guy rocks.
He does and he doesn't, right? Because like it's also like a very gentle on ramp to that world of music.
Absolutely, yeah. He's kind of just like a sleepy time tea kind of guy, which is like really cool. I really like the vibe.
It sounds like you were kind of alluding to like overall trauma. When you sort of like think back on growing up in a religious household, do you feel that was largely a traumatic experience?
I think it was like kind of cool. Not kind of cool. I guess it was kind of, I think when you think back at it, you're kind of like, as a kid, you're like, oh, this is cool because it's like community and everyone around me is doing the same thing, and you don't think it's weird. It's kind of normal.
I grew up Jewish. Like there are definitely benefits to like not only community, but also like just like a sense of like history and a sense of identity that you have tied to it.
Totally, exactly. And and the community I grew up in, it was super tight knit, so that felt like kind of nice. It felt like family. But yeah, I think as you get older and you just and moving around and just like doing different things and going to school, I just kind of realized that wasn't normal. Like there was a lot of things that I had learned that I was like, that's not cool and not normal. But again, it kind of also it put me into perspective about how I kind of about my own spiritual beliefs and my own belief in faith and specifically to God and stuff. But yeah, like I guess the trauma side, it just kind of like every kind of thing you go through, it's like a weird day where you're like at the grocery store and you are kind of just grabbing tofu and then you're like, oh wait, shit, why did that memory pop up in my head? That was weird. Why did that happen? And then you're like standing in the aisle for like a second and then someone's behind you trying to grab something and you're like, oh shit, sorry. But it feels kind of like that with religious trauma. But I guess most of it wasn't too bad, I want to say, for sure. I think I learned a lot about just how to be forgiving. At least that's what I want to say. I took away from most of it.
Do you feel like that idea of forgiveness was something that was something your parents had with regards to you, and you sort of working toward living this life outside of that specific faith?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's interesting because it's so like my parents, they're from Somalia, and my grandfather owned a radio station, which was kind of cool, and he had a lot of local Somalian artists play. So they kind of like grew up with music as well, but I think it's such a different, for them musically, the topics were so different and it was never sexual or any of that. So I think for them, they kind of stayed in a secular, or not stayed in sort of a religious friendly realm, I guess. But yeah, I guess there is forgiveness for sure. I think for me, I think what I took away from forgiveness for sure a lot was when I was writing this record, just thinking about how hard it was for me to let go of feeling like I kind of put myself in that situation, and why hadn't I left earlier, and like I think a lot of the spirals one goes through when super guilty, and also just shaming myself, and I had to really learn how to forgive myself, essentially.
It's not guilt over leaving, it's guilt over staying in too long.
Yeah. At first it was for sure. At first I thought it was, guilt for leaving. Yeah. And then I was like, wait, it is staying too long. Yeah. It was feeling like I was cheating them because I wasn't fully present and I wasn't being 100% myself. And I was feeling like I was at a job rather than, building an honest experience with someone kind of thing.
That might be as close as we get to resolution in life, is sort of being able to forgive ourselves. And certainly I don't think everything and everyone necessarily warrant forgiveness, but but I also think that I think about this a lot with regard to my own parents, and I think about how young they were when they had me and my sister. And as I've sort of progressed through some of those life stages, I've realized, where I was mentally at that state. And I think certainly in the case of my own parents, I 100% believe that they did their best, that they didn't always make the right decision, but like given the information that they had and the place they were in, that they did the best they could, and they made what they believed at the time were right decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you nailed it, because I learned that exact like sort of phrase from, or that sort of mindset from in therapy, where it was kind of just being really frustrated with just how I was feeling and just my childhood and all of this stuff, and realizing you just are given these tools and you have to just use them to your ability, essentially. And like my parents, just kind of had those tools and like used them to the best of their ability. Like they came to this country young, and they were fleeing a war, so it's so new to them, and just trying to just figure out life and also process a huge traumatic experience. and then having kids whilst all of that's happening all together, it is, yeah, really crazy to sort of grow up in that kind of sort of period of their life. And yeah, and I realized it was just kind of and I think that brought me a lot of peace when you realize, like, yeah, they were just doing the best they can, and then also framing it to myself and being like, I'm just doing the best I can with what I have and with all the experiences that I've had up until now, which, yeah, I think it is freeing. And in a way, yeah, and that could, yeah, that is the resolution. Again, this is a great therapy session.
Not only the sort of the very, as you said, like the very clear and obvious trauma that they dealt with in their home country, but also just the act of coming to another country where, I don't know how well they, spoke the language necessarily, but certainly, I assume a place where they didn't really know a ton of people. I mean, I know that like there are like a lot of sort of Somali pockets, I think I want to say like, I think Minneapolis here in the States has a really large Somali population. Totally. Ilhan Omar is from there.
Yes.
Well, not from there, but
yeah.
But if you're moving to, if you're effectively moving to the other side of the world and an entirely different culture, I mean, it makes a lot of sense to carry your religion with you, because that is, that is a built-in community that you have, even if you don't know anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a way to, yeah, just feel like it's a piece of home that they carry with them for sure. So sometimes I think a lot of it, when I started to grow up, while I was growing up, I started to realize that maybe it's not really technically connected to spirituality. It's just technically connected to culture and connection and human connection. And they both kind of, I mean, they were kind of like, yeah, weaving in and out of each other in a way that, like, my parents were kind of like, it is very strict, but it's also kind of just like, it's a way that they could navigate sort of this new country. Yeah, essentially.
And a built-in set of rules too, like a built-in set of like guidelines for your life. I mean, that I don't want to say it makes things easier, but it makes things clearer, certainly.
Yeah, I think about that a lot too. Yeah, because it feels very good to feel like you have a purpose or a path that you can feel like it's, it's dead on, and you don't have to sort of ponder on other things and have like an existential crisis every other day. It feels nice. Yeah. And so, I mean, it definitely has, like, again, like everything, it has its like ups and downs, but yeah, ultimately, I think it's kind of interesting to just be like, yeah, like it's a bit, for me at least, it does sound freeing in a way, because you don't have to feel like there's this huge weight on you, because you already know, in a way.
There's something really unmooring in the sort of like relativistic nature of life outside of religion, of like, I sincerely believe that like most people just have a moral compass, and I don't think it requires, religion to get you there, but
totally.
But things do become more relativistic when you're outside of it, which is good from the standpoint of like, I mean, I think it's largely good, but it's good from the standpoint of, that you are, you're willing to consider other people's, viewpoints in ways that maybe you wouldn't before, and, get to know sort of like that, what they're carrying with them through the day and where they're coming from. But then, there's no clear moral center.
Yeah, totally. And it's just really nice to know that all of it's kind of just rooted in love and connection in a way, and a general wanting of sort of, like being a better person. I think a lot of religion and a lot of spirituality is trying to connect yourself back to yourself, like sort of being, being the best that you can be. But again, yeah, I guess like you said, there isn't really a there's no moral connection. Like someone can be a moral person without, religion. Yeah, it's really, I think I'm still on a journey of like how to figure out what spiritual or how I view my own faith, and how I view, because I am very connected to, I think I'm still, because I am Muslim, and I think I just really want to reconnect with it in a way that doesn't feel like the way that my parents have brought me up with it in a way. So it is kind of confusing.
I mentioned I was Jewish, and I grew up going to synagogue, and I got bar mitzvahed and the whole thing. But in sort of in like Reform Judaism, there's definitely this idea of being religiously Jewish or ethnically Jewish. I don't know if you're sort of like familiar with that concept in the context of Judaism, but for you, when you say you're still Muslim, I guess what does that mean? And do you think that you could continue to be that, and not necessarily believe all the same things?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess for me, I think I'm still trying to figure it out. I think I definitely connect with Sufism because it's more spiritual, and I think there's just ideas that make me feel more comfortable and I feel more connected to. I think like it's interesting because, I think my parents' way of, or the way I was raised, it was more rigid and more, I want to say, kind of punishment based. But and I think a lot of strict religions, and I want to maybe say, maybe I'm not speaking for everyone for sure, but like just from what I've talked to about with my friends about just like Abrahamic religions, they can be very, like punishment based in a way, and that's where things get really, because it's like fear versus love in a way, and I think I'm trying to take the love route now. I think that's what I'm trying to do. Yeah, and it's interesting though. Yeah, the when you said about I guess with Judaism, because I guess it's brought you pass down Judaism from the mother. So if the child,
but it's also just that like that there's no sort of like historic country in the same way that like there's this like this idea of diaspora that's very tied to it, and because of that, a lot of people draw their sort of ethnic identity through their religion.
Totally. Okay. Yeah. There is that, and I still think that it's a very, I don't know, I feel like it's a really beautiful thing when I can see someone be like, yeah, I am Muslim and stuff, and then I'm like, awesome, like we, like you can understand my upbringing, like, or like you just get things about like that, like you understand certain things that like someone else wouldn't understand, which I'm sure that's how other people feel of like other faiths as well. Like you just feel like an instant, like I know you kind of, but to what extent again, but like, yeah, feels pretty. Yeah.
Like you don't like wear a hijab, for example.
I did for a very long time actually. And then I decided I made the decision when I was in my late teens maybe or something, or early 20s maybe. I stopped because I just didn't feel like I was doing it for the right reasons, and I just felt like I wasn't as connected to it anymore, and I just felt like I was definitely I felt like I when I was wearing it, I was presenting as someone that wasn't upholding it to the highest standard, I guess, that it needs to be held up to.
That's really interesting to me because it's a very, usually, excuse me, usually people moving away from a faith is like a very sort of symbolic thing or like a very like abstract thing. But you, for you, the experience had this like very physical aspect to it. And like there's a big, the first day you're walking around without, wearing a head covering in public, like that's a big life change.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think a lot of it too was like when I was younger, I just felt like it was when I took it off, it was kind of just like I already knew where I kind of stood, and I also had like kind of come to terms with it towards like towards the end. I was kind of like really just not feeling like it was me anymore, and I didn't really want to, just like let people know. And it's also such a different experience for Muslim women because, or Muslim people in general who wear the headscarf, just because it's kind of one of those things that you're walking around like physically showing people your faith. And so there's a lot of, I guess like there is some sort of a little bit of trauma maybe that comes with it, especially when you're living in a space that isn't very welcoming to that. And also just like your own ideas of your body and, sort of your own ideas about chastity and stuff like that as well comes to play in. And you kind of have to really think about what it means to you actually, and how your views are on chastity and sort of like modesty and stuff like that.
You said women and then kind of corrected yourself to people, but it obviously like it is a very traditionally gendered thing. And for you, like, and I don't know when this happened, but for you sort of realizing that you were non-binary, that's complicated, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's super complicated. Yeah, it is complicated, but not to say that there are probably people right now who are non-binary or even trans who are also wearing the hijab as well. So they also exist as well, and they live a very nuanced life, I think, too, as well. And I think that's why I kind of started to. I think before then, though, I didn't really have the term, or I didn't really understand. I think. When I because it is fairly recent, I guess, maybe the term to me at least. So because I always knew that I wasn't really connected to my gender in a weird way, but like the term non-binary when I was kind of coming to terms with my gender, and also just thinking about when I did take it off, I was kind of like, okay, like this kind of feels more at home. This kind of makes more sense to me right now.
It is a really interesting thing about human nature, like how empowering it can be to have a word to describe something, because like at very least that's like vindication that other people are dealing with that or have historically dealt with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that there have been so many different terms for it that we probably maybe sometimes couldn't even, maybe to this day, maybe, I don't know, can't even translate, and it probably means non-binary too. It's just interesting to think about.
We know that it is a concept that exists in like different ways in different cultures, like certainly
totally.
like either whether it's a third gender or however it's framed. But it's absolutely not a new phenomenon.
Yeah, I think when I first learned or understood the term, I was like, okay, this makes sense. And for so long, I guess when I was younger, it was like always tied to like being, a tomboy. And like, I think that also had its own time and place, because, it was always like you grow out of being a tomboy, like you grow into, becoming more closely connected to your gender and stuff. But some of us just don't grow out of that. So yeah.
So I mean, if learning the word is new, then you're adopting new pronouns. It must be very new.
Yeah, I think growing up I had such a disdain towards like her. I don't know why. I didn't like that pronoun for a long time, and then when I got to, and yes, even with she, her and stuff, I guess I go by it right now, and also they, them. But yeah, for a while, I mean, I think in school I minored in gender and women's studies. So when I learned about, the idea, I had a prof who sort of introduced the class in a way that was like letting us know that if we weren't too sure of people's pronouns, or even if we didn't know, or like they kind of just addressed everyone by them. And I just thought that was really, really powerful. I just felt like that's nice to sort of it's not only the assumption, but like just allowing them just to exist without having to put on this put all these, like, because it's kind of, I don't know, for me it's when I really hated it back then, when I hated she her, like it was really loaded for me, and now I kind of let go of all of that. But yeah, it felt nice to have that idea of just like having them be genderless in a way by saying them. So yeah, and I think a lot of people feel that connection when they kind of have the they them pronoun, at least.
What drew you to that minor?
I don't know. I took it as a elective in school, and I was like, you know, I was the history major, so it kind of dealt with the history of just like, yeah, gender and women, and I was like, okay, this kind of makes sense. And then when we started to sort of, yeah, so then when I took it as an elective, I was kind of like, this is really intriguing. I really enjoy just knowing, yeah, the history of like sort of the women's labor movement, and also just like women's rights in general, and also just like the history of just like queer studies and such. So that was just like really, it just was up my alley. So I was kind of like, I have to take this. It was great.
So it sounds like music has been a part of your life for a long time, but when did you actually start making it?
I started making music when I was 14, 15, I think, probably. Yeah. And I kind of was just writing songs on an acoustic guitar that I kind of bought one day with like a bunch of money I saved from like my first job. And I was, yeah, really, at first it was like a great exercise. I just kind of wanted to learn how to play the guitar. And because I've always, when I was in middle school, I played the violin and I really wanted to play the guitar, but it was like band or strings. And I was like, well, strings is kind of close to guitar, so I'll become a violinist. And yeah, and so
same parts, yeah,
same kind of parts, less strings. Yeah, and then I was like, and then when I got to play guitar in high school, I was like really excited, and I started writing songs, horrible songs, but there were songs nonetheless.
That's a very common experience.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So yeah, that's probably when I kind of started. Mm-hmm.
This is your first record, right?
This is my first full-length record. I got an EP out, or I have an EP out that came out in 2019 called Yummy. That was also interesting because it was sort of me experimenting with, I guess, like just different sounds. I was so used to making music by myself, and when I made Yummy, it was like the first time I got to go into a studio and sort of flesh out songs.
So in a way, that experience kind of prepared you for writing your full-length record in isolation.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I think what I didn't get to learn though at the time was probably how important the metronome is, and how that was probably a little, because I think the first time around when I was in the studio, my friend kind of dealt with all the drums and stuff like that, and also helped me play a lot of my guitar parts. But this time around, I played all the guitar parts, and I because I'm not, I wasn't really used to essentially collaborating with people the way I collaborated on this record, because there's a lot of folks who kind of play on this record, so it felt very new again, but in a good way for sure.
What was the nature of that collaboration? Because I mean, you did eventually get yourself into a studio. Yeah,
it was kind of, yeah. So it's a quarantine album, but it was the year that we were all getting our vaccines. So it was 2021, and I had written all of the songs, and so I had all these like skeletons essentially, which was just like every song written out and played out the way it needs to be played. And I went into the studio, recorded all my parts, and then sent them out to friends. And I was like, hey guys, could you put your musical touch on this? And I have a really great friend. Her name is Eliza Nemi, and she's a great cellist. And she played cello, and she also played bass, and she did backup vocals on this record. Christian Lee Hudson was awesome. He lent his great guitar skills and played a beautiful part on My Little Room. And and then there were various other people, Aaron Hutchinson, who played horns on a lot of on most of the songs, or all the songs on the records, or the horn parts on the songs on the records, on the record. I'm getting tongue tied. And he did a phenomenal job. He was really great, and it was so surprising because I sent him each track, and he like would send back essentially 20 different parts with harmonies and layers, and I was just so overwhelmed. But I was like overwhelmed like a kid at a toy store. So it's great.
Because your, I don't know if previous work is the right way of putting it, but because I guess your sort of like previous experience was so tied to just like that kind of singer songwriter like you and a guitar, that when given the opportunity, you wanted to, because it is a dense record, that you wanted to sort of go in the opposite direction, or at very least take advantage of those resources.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that's what it was. It was sort of, I had all these people sort of close to me, and I had a really great opportunity to work with a friend, Louis Short, who produced the record, with his brother Nick Short, and I just kind of was like, could you do what you do best, which I love Louis' music a lot, so it was kind of nice to work with him and have him sort of arrange the record like the way he would arrange his own music, or just kind of have his musical touch on it. And it was nice to like kind of have, I think Toronto just has like a really good music scene, and we have a lot of great artists and great bands, so it's nice to just connect with people and just be like, hey, like, you're a friend of so and so, is that cool to just, if you want to hop on this song? Or and then I would lend, vocals as well, or, do a musical exchange if necessary. But everyone was just so great, and just excited. So it was nice to just have them available too. And also maybe the timing helps too, because we were all kind of like, a lot of, things were just opening up. We're all trying to get our vaccinations. Real life isn't really happening, but it's also kind of teeter-tottering. It's about to start, kind of.
I mean, another thing that Canada has in general that like certainly we don't have here is like some support structure for art.
Yeah. We have grants, which is honestly the most helpful, very, very helpful and incredible thing. It's sad and heartbreaking when I'm like, I wish I could extend this to my American friends. Like, I'm always just like, I wish I could put your name on the grant or get you a grant.
At least we have good healthcare down here.
Yeah, exactly. You guys
we'll give you guns, and you can give us grants. It'll be a
trade-off. Yeah, totally. Exactly. Yeah, I think we would probably be good to also give you guys a bit of healthcare as well. Maybe healthcare and some grants. Yeah, and you'll get them going.
Was that helpful in taking that step and really feeling like you could sort of commit yourself to this life in a way that you might not otherwise be able to?
It's still kind of, I guess I've tried to. It's so crazy because I feel like a lot of my musical journey or sort of career it's all just kind of domino effects in an interesting way, or like just kind of trickled. I've tried really hard to not have any expectations, because once I do that, I just get into like a mode of like I think everyone kind of does. If you have an expectation, you spiral if it doesn't go a certain way. So
disappointment.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of just was like, I'm just going to make music. And I think for me, what I've started to realize is like, even if I'm not signed, or even if I'm not touring or all that kind of stuff, I am inevitably going to still be making music. And I think it's always just been a piece of me, that it's always just been something that I've always, have felt so connected to. And it's essentially like a family member to me that I like have to see every day. So I feel like, or like maybe music for me is like a caregiver essentially at this point. So I just kind of, and so it's kind of nice that it's worked out in a way where I get to make it now, and I get to, I guess, like show it and sort of allow people to have and yeah, perform and stuff like that. But I think I'll never let go of the tunes. Kind of.
It gives you it has historically given you a way to express yourself that maybe it sounds like you weren't really comfortable doing just in your personal life.
Yeah, totally. I've struggled with vulnerability, so it's a way for me to have
So
a
you're doing the most vulnerable thing possible.
yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of doing what they say. What is it like in I think it's like in cognitive behavioral therapy, they kind of make you do like it's like shock therapy or something, or like kind of exposure therapy.
Immersive, yeah.
Yeah, immersive therapy. Yeah, that's definitely what I'm doing with songwriting. Yeah, and you know what? It works.
I know, like, you've been a singer your entire life, and maybe you don't feel this way, but like for me, and I think for most people,
Yeah.
singing in front of people is incredibly vulnerable.
Totally. Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, it's crazy because it feels like you are. Yeah. For a long time, though, like I think I felt more. I think now I feel like I feel more okay with singing. For a while, yeah, it was kind of hard, and it took me a long time to like sort of even get on stage. I was so much more comfortable just like making music, recording it, and putting on Bandcamp or like putting it on SoundCloud and just having people kind of like listen to it, but I wouldn't perform. And now I'm like, this feels like so much more better, and like I feel like I'm one with the world when I sing, which is nice.
I read somewhere, I think in an interview that you did, and I really liked it. You described it as feeling like a runner's high.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a runner's high for sure. Like when I've always described it in a way, it's kind of similar to songwriting in a sense. Like when you're writing music, it's kind of like you take your board out into the water and you're like about to surf, but you are coasting and coasting and coasting, and then once you catch a wave, you have to, settle yourself onto your board, and then once you jump and you're up and you're riding the wave, that is like, I guess when you're finishing up the song, but like that's like, and it's very equivalent also to the runner side, but but like it's that feeling of being so connected and stuff. And I talked to my friend recently, or like while we were recording, we were talking about surfing a lot because I sort of got into just surfing, and I really like, I guess maybe a lot of it was also just like revisiting Beach Boy records, but
In My Room seems like a very clear influence.
Yeah. Brian Wilson. I kind of, I went, we were talking a lot about surfing, and like he was saying how, his brother surfs, my producer friend, Louis, his brother surfs. And he was like, it feels like he said it was like, he felt really like one with the earth. And there was this like calmness that he felt. And I was like, that's kind of like how I feel when I finish a song. Like I feel like I flushed everything out and I feel really calm. And yeah, I'm really curious to see if once I do get on a board, because I do really want to surf, if it's kind of a similar feeling. Like I think that would be interesting. Maybe a different type of, or different flavor of calm that will happen.
Well, I mean, keep in mind, only one of the Beach Boys actually surfed.
Oh, which one?
Dennis.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah.
Well, he put out one soul. He recorded 2 soul records.
Right.
But he put out one called Pacific Ocean Blue, which is a masterpiece. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually listened to that when we were doing Twinkie. It is really good. And then I heard some really creepy stuff he did.
Well, he was friends with Charles Manson, so that
yeah.
But Pacific Ocean Blue, I think that like that speaks to what you're talking about, in that it really is like a record about being connected with the ocean.
Yeah. And that, and like, exactly. And that felt really cool to hear, because I was like, wow, it's like you are one with nature in a sense. And yeah, I don't know. I'm really, really excited to sort of start delving into that once I have time.
I assume you played your record for your parents?
Yeah, I did. And they really loved it, actually. So it has been kind of great. It's been really nice. It's kind of like it's been healing for sure in a way.
It's edifying.
Yeah, absolutely. And it did a lot for my inner child for sure. And I think like now they're kind of excited for me to sort of indulge myself or for my endeavors in music. I think they're kind of like, we're excited for you. And like my mom sometimes will come up to me and is like, I have a song idea. Why don't you write about this? And it's it's so funny. And it's like, yeah, it's such a weird, it's interesting to be on the opposite end of it all, kind of on the other side of it.
There's something about putting out a record, like an LP specifically, that feels real, maybe in a way that it didn't feel real prior to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it feels, especially because it's like a full EP, a full LP, and it's sort of encapsulates a time where I really felt lost, and now I'm looking back at that person and going, it's it gets better, maybe. I don't know. Again, there's no resolution.
It gets better in some ways, it gets worse in other ways.
Yeah.
But you're willing to look at who you were before and when that record was recorded, and you're willing to sort of like forgive yourself for some of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of feel like, I feel really honored to have let this person exist sonically. I feel like that feels really good, and to have just archived that, because I guess art in general and music in general is sort of just an archive of like feelings, emotions, or times or stories and stuff, which it feels nice. In a way, I kind of feel like I'm an archivalist. Is that the word? Archivist. Okay.
Yeah,
maybe so. That's the term. Yeah, I think music. Yeah, I think that's kind of where I feel safe with right now, I think.